knowing that they are worthy of good things,
Mhm.
knowing that they're worthy of, having the family, the job, and the friends that keep them uplifted. And I think that's very important because we always think we are not worth the things that we dream of and dream for.
Welcome to Women in Awakening. I'm your host, Cynthia James, and I feel so honored to welcome women from around the world who get to come and share their gifts, their wisdom, their courage that really shaped their whole life to be more conscious and to build a compassionate world, actually. I really believe this is a time for women emerging, and I want to invite you, the listener, to take in the gifts that are being shared with you by my guests so that you can step into your gifts, you can step into your voice, your leadership, and the power to recreate meaningful change. Today, we're going to talk about reclaiming your voice, and I'm very excited for this topic. So, if this show resonates with you, please subscribe, share, leave a comment. It helps these voices reach further and wider. You can also connect with me at cynthiajames.net. So, now let me introduce you to my guest. Her name is Yolanda Martinez. She is a women's success coach and the creator of the transformation program, 21 Days with Yolanda. She empowers women to reclaim their voice, rebuild their self worth, and step into the most confident, aligned version of themselves. Drawing from her own powerful story of resilience, reinvention, and healing, Yolanda guides women through mindset breakthroughs, emotional recovery, and self love practices to create lasting change. Oh, Yolanda, I'm so happy that you're here.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, I want to talk about where you were born, how you grew up, because the chance is you didn't come on the planet going, "Oh, I'm going to be a successful athlete."
I was born in Mexico, and my parents moved us to the US when I was 6. So it was me and my middle sister that were traveling. My mother was pregnant at the time of us coming across,
Mhm.
and she ended up having my youngest sister in TJ, Tijuana.
Uh,
And then we ended up in Oregon and then Washington. So we lived in Washington for 6 years, and then we moved to Oregon for 6 years.
What called you to the path that you're on now? Did you go to school for this? How did it happen?
It all came together. When you're a kid, you don't learn mindset. Don't live with your story and don't carry your experiences with you. So I think I was very outspoken at a very young age. As a teenager, I literally spoke my mind to the point where my dad we always butted heads because, being a Latina, it's like you're supposed to be subservient to, taking care of the men and the family and the house. And I was a complete opposite. My mother tried that with me, and it didn't go over very well. I was very adamant to not be um, just subservient to taking care of the house and the men and the family. And so at a very young age, watching her, my dad was an alcoholic and he was abusive, and I never really saw them interact in a loving, caring way. And so, from watching that, it just made me realize, like, and I asked the question when I was about 13. I asked her, why was she with my dad? Because they were always fighting, and he was always drinking and being abusive, and she never really stood up for herself. And her answer just, at that age shocked me because, when we grew up, we watched our parents stay together no matter what. They fought for staying together, keeping the family together. But to me, it didn't make sense that, her response was, I'm with him because of you kids.
Oh,
And I was like, oh, wow. So you're not with him because you love him and you guys are happy together. It's because of us. And so in my mind, I made made a note of this will never be a relationship that I have. And so
Well,
I
I well, I love that because, I was a similar kid. I had a father who was an alcoholic and a stepfather who was a wife beater and a pedophile and all. And when I finally got through therapy and could confront my mother, and I said, I don't understand why you stayed. And she said, I didn't have any place to go to be able to take care of you. And, I would love to tell you that I was conscious and loving in that moment, but that wasn't exactly the case. So, but I want to talk about, so what called you to do the work you do today? Was it because of the childhood?
I think just growing up and watching, my mother, and it's the same situation, she never worked outside the home unless, I was a migrant worker from the time I was 7 until I was 18. So every summer we went and worked picking strawberries, cucumbers, raspberries. So that was my school vacation is we had to work to earn money to pay for our school supplies and our school clothes. And that was the only time that my mother would work. And so when I asked her that question, it was, to me, honestly, I felt like she had nowhere to go and she had no way of leaving. And so she didn't speak fluent English. And so she couldn't go out and get a job. And so for me, it was that sense of, wow, I need to use my voice and stand up for myself so that this doesn't happen to me. So I'm not in a similar situation. And then, later, my parents got divorced and my mother moved us to California. And I had older half siblings on my mother's side. And so she decided to move us to be closer to them. I didn't really grow up with them. I met them, when I was a teenager and they were already older, married and had their own kids. But there was things that they were involved in that I didn't want any part of. I wanted to be a teacher. I was in the fashion industry and I was a model for 25 years. And um, my vision of where my life was going didn't include the things that they were doing. And
Yeah.
so I had to walk away from my mom and my siblings because I didn't want to be around the drugs and the dealing and the, trying to incorporate the family into what he was doing. And for me, it just didn't make sense because one thing that my dad taught us is work ethic. You work hard, you earn your money, you don't have to explain to anyone why you bought what you bought when you wanted to buy it. Watching him, my older brother, live his life the way he was living, it was like constantly, looking over his shoulder, like who's following me, who's watching me. And it's like, I didn't want that in my life. And so at 19, I had to make that decision, that hard decision of I needed to walk away or else I was going to be sucked into that lifestyle and I had no desire. And so I sat my mother down and I said, it's either him or you come with me and we go live somewhere else. And she decided to stay and be close to him. So I was like, then I'm done.
Well, first of all, I really want to acknowledge you for choosing you. Um, I was looking at your bio and you talk about, teaching women to choose themselves first. And um, a few years ago, I wrote a book called I Choose Me for Women. And when I was doing the research until the early 1900s, you know, we didn't have a voice. We were property.
Mm-hmm.
And so for you to walk away from that lifestyle that could have just taken you down a path you didn't want to go and to choose you to step forward to make a difference. But what made you want to do that for other women?
Because society for a long time, even now you see it here and there, they always portrayed women as victims.
Mhm.
And I was never a follower in the trend of anything the society said I needed to be or should be, or that that's what was dictated for me to be. I always stood my ground on no, that doesn't fit in who I am, and it doesn't certainly doesn't fit in who I want to be and what kind of role model I want to be for my students, especially young girls who don't have that at home. And so I had to take my whole story of my life and not let it be just an experience that I learned from.
Yeah.
Migrant worker wasn't, I was going to be a migrant worker my whole life. For me, it was, okay, this is a stepping stone for me to get to the next place. And then
Right.
when we got to the next place, it was things there didn't fit into what I wanted to see and what I saw for myself. So I had to take that as that's another stepping stone. Now I have to step into this. And so I think it's how you tell your story. It's how you tell your
Yeah.
story to yourself every day. And it's how you play it in your head and you envision it in your head that you make those choices. Women aren't led to do that. We're supposed to be, yeah, you can go to college, but then you become a family, you get married and you have kids, and that's your life. And for me, it was like, no, I can have that. I can have the family, I can have the kids, but there's still got to be something that I choose for me that makes me happy so that I can be a better parent, a better mentor, a better, leader for young girls. So yeah, it's how you tell your story and how you play it. I never played the victim role. I never played like, poor me, I didn't have money. Poor me, I didn't have the designer clothes when I was growing up. I have a sister who's like, her whole image was following in wanting to be somebody else. Because one, she didn't like to be called Latina or Mexican. Um, she always wanted to be somebody else that she saw. And so for me, it was like, no, I'm very proud of being Mexican. I've never denied my roots and my culture. And so it's how you tell a story.
Yes. Well, okay, there's a couple of things and that I want to say because my heart is very touched by you.
Well,
And
thank
what I mean by that is, there's a whole lot of stuff going on in our country and all over the planet about immigrants, right? But here's the thing. What you're telling me is you made a conscious decision of who Yolanda wanted to be beyond a story, beyond a circumstance, beyond an appearance. This is who I've come here to be, and I choose to step into it fully.
Yes.
And I'm feeling like that's what you are asking the women that you coach to do that, to step into their worthiness and transform their lives by choice.
Yes. Absolutely. Because you have the choice. I had a young girl ask me one time, I couldn't have kids, unfortunately, but I loved kids. And somehow, some way in my mind, when I was very young, I knew I was going to be the one in my family because I loved kids so much. I was going to be the one that couldn't have kids. I just had that feeling. And so I enjoyed my teaching. I enjoyed being a nanny. And, I had a young girl ask me one time, I think she was 19, and she was dating a guy. And she asked me, how did you know you didn't want to have kids?
Mhm.
And I said, well, I didn't know. I said, for me, it wasn't like something that I had planned. I always said, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I have another purpose and I have to honor that purpose. I said, but here's the thing. I said, why are you asking me that question? And she said, because I know I don't want to have kids, but my boyfriend keeps pressuring me into the conversation of having kids with him. And so I said to her, I said, you have a choice. If
Mhm.
you've already mentally and consciously already told yourself you don't want kids, I said, you can't go and have kids for somebody else.
Right.
I said, here's
What a
what's going to
horrible
happen.
environment.
Yeah. I said, here's what'll happen. And I went, I'm not trying to make him look bad. I said, no, you just have to be honest with them. You have to be very honest and you have to be very direct and you have to be very adamant on what you already know you don't want. I said, because if you have kids with him, here are two things that could happen. You could end up being happy that you had kids with him, or you could end up breaking up with this guy and now you have a child that you have to raise by yourself and he will possibly not be in the picture.
Mhm.
And then if you stay together and it's still that feeling of I shouldn't have had kids, you're going to be resentful towards him. And then in the end, that resentful is going to be poured into that child. I said, so you have to be very, very adamant on what your choice is and use your voice to tell him, this is where I stand and I'm not swaying from it. This is a non-negotiable for me.
Well, okay, I love that story, but I want to talk about so many women are afraid to use their voices, afraid they'll be punished or they'll be perceived as a this or a that, whatever, and that they can put their job, their family in jeopardy. So what do you say to these women about the importance of their voice and standing in their authenticity?
Well, your voice is the one thing that no one can take away from you unless they muzzle you or put a tape over your mouth. You have that right. So in choosing to have the job, the dream job that you want, and in choosing to have a family, it's use your voice to say, you know what? Yeah, we are a family, and I need to know that if I need a 30-minute break by myself, whether it's a bath or a walk or go hang out with a girlfriend, I need to know that you are going to have my back.
Yes.
So it's just being aware of the fact that no one's going to punish you if you decide that today you need to sit on the couch for 30 minutes and not think about what craziness is going on in the world and be okay with it and not punish yourself because somebody else is saying, oh, well, why are you doing that?
Right. Well,
It's
because we're being told that we're selfish if we take
Yes.
care of ourselves first. But the thing about that is, and I guess people are afraid to lose. I mean, it sounded to me when you were telling me the story of your mother that she was afraid to lose the relationship because of the unknown.
Oh,
But
yeah.
what do you have to say to women about the fact that they're not here to suffer?
Because I think it's because of the things that are put in our head as we're growing up by our parents, by our teachers, by our friends. It's thinking that if you take 30 minutes for yourself, it's being selfish. No, it's not being selfish. What if I get sick? Then how are you going to take care of yourself if you can't do it while I'm perfectly healthy and taking a 30-minute break? And so it's that realization of nothing is going to change. Like the world is not going to end. That your child is not going to get hurt in 30 minutes of you going and taking a bath and just shutting the world out to compose yourself, to reconnect with yourself, to have the energy and the motivation and the positivity to not take out whatever might have happened at work, whatever argument you might have had with someone, because eventually all those things, when you don't use your voice, you'll blow up at the wrong person.
Yes. Yes.
It's like when I tell women, cry. You want to cry? Have a good cry, get it all out, because if you don't, an argument or somebody will trigger you with something, you're going to cry and then you're going to be mad at the world for making you cry in public or around other people. And so it's take that time to really honor your peace of mind.
Yes. Yes. Well, I want to know, okay, how do people find you? I mean, and your work, and especially this 21 days with Yolanda. How do people find you?
21 Days with Yolanda is a program. It's an online program, and you can find it on 21dayswithyolanda.com, my website. It's on there. I'm also on social media. I have an Instagram, I have Facebook, I have LinkedIn. All my other ways of contacting me are there. The program it's at your own pace. It's about self-love, self-worth, self-care. And, you go through the process of honoring yourself, getting rid of the stuff that happened in the past, change the story you're telling yourself and rewrite it and give yourself that worthiness of this is who I am and I'm so worth having it.
It's beautiful. Well, I ask the same last question of every woman on this show. This show is called Women Awakening. What do you think is the most important thing about women awakening in this moment?
Knowing that they are worthy of good things, knowing that they're worthy of, having the family, the job, and the friends that keep them uplifted. And I think that's very important because we always think we are not worth the things that we dream of and dream for.
Well, I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful that you're here, that you're doing this work. Thank you so much for being a guest on the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Okay, ladies. I hope you were as inspired as I am by what Yolanda had to say. And I'm really grateful that you're a part of this Women Awakening conversation. You know, today's episode is just an example of extraordinary women who said, I'm not only going to change my life, I'm going to be a game changer for others, right? So please put in the comments, what stood out for you today. Be sure to subscribe and share this with a woman who needs to hear it, who wants to understand that she's worthy, right? You can also connect with me and explore coaching and my work at cynthiajames.net. So until the next time, I'm just going to invite you to keep rising, keep shining, bring your voice, reclaim your voice if you haven't done so, and keep awakening to the fact that you're important, you're worthy, and you matter. I'm grateful. I love you, and I will see you on the next show. Many blessings.